Welcome to tonight's live stream. I'm going to get ready to start the stream in one moment. I just need to let everybody know that the stream is going on, and I'm going to do that right now. Okay. Okay, what's up, Shawn S? Gonna get ready to get started right now. And today I'm gonna be talking about my book, The Man Crisis, and some chapters. I in the later parts of the book where I outline the theories I have regarding a possible economic crisis and a possible civil war. So these are the topics I'm going to be talking about in tonight's live stream as related to the man crisis and this whole concept of civil war that you hear some of these white supremacists and some of these far right people talking about. And I'm going to go a bit in depth on why there might be a possibility of civil war because it relates directly to later chapters in the man crisis. Now, in those later chapters of the man crisis, I again talk about this whole concept of civil war, but it goes back to the way we have been raising boys here in America. And because we have been raising boys in this gynocentric culture and this culture where they have learned these feminine life skills, these boys have grown up to become men who just do not know how to go out here and get their needs met, nor do they know how to use the resources around them to do things like build businesses or create new markets or new marketplaces. In most cases, because they have grown up in these female headed households and run by females, they are looking to get their needs met in the exact same way a female gets her needs met, because when it comes down to a female, in most cases, she gets everything she wants from a man. And because this boy is grown up in a female headed household, he is now growing up to believe that the only way he can get his needs met is if some female gives him what he wants. Unfortunately, when he goes out into the world of men, he finds himself in for a rude awakening because, in most cases, no one is going to do anything for him, and they're expecting him to go out here and do for himself. Unfortunately, your beta male does not know how to go out here and do for himself. And because he has learned these feminine life skills and he's learned to behave like a female, this is what makes for the foundation for a man who wants to go to war with others, because he does not know how to get his needs met. He does not know how to use the resources around him, and he does not know how to go out here and create new things or build new things. He doesn't even know how to even do basic things for himself. So the only way he knows how to get something is if somebody gives it to him. And if somebody doesn't give it to him, what he's going to do is start thinking about finding ways for people to take it from. And this is goes right into the chapters I talk about regarding crime and the man crisis, because one of the reasons why a lot of these beta males in places like the inner city turn to crime is because they don't know how to go out here and work, because they have not seen a model of a man going out here to work in their communities, and they have not had a group of men in the community to teach and prepare these boys to work, nor do they have businesses in their communities where they are being given opportunities, or men helping them get opportunities to find employment. If you look at most American marketplaces these days, we have mostly chain stores that are run by multinational corporations, and we have a lot of stores that are run by foreigners. And these people are more about getting money out of a community rather than investing in a community. And in the case of the chain stores, they are usually gynocentric foundations, and you have females in management running them. So they're more invested in hiring another female rather than developing and building up another male. So this again leads to a lot of men not being able to find full-time employment in most places. And this is what leads to the creation of the crime, which is the foundation of what I believe will lead to the eventual civil war, because all wars are created as related to economics. But the foundation for any war is economics, and this civil war that could possibly erupt as a result of this man crisis has to do with the economics as related to the way we have been raising boys to become men. Because in our gynocentric society, we have spent 50 years investing in women, and we have not invested any resources in men. And because we have not invested resources in men, many of these men, they do not know how to get their needs met. They do not know how to create businesses for themselves, and they don't know how to work with others towards creating businesses. So this is their motivation to go out here and participate in criminal enterprise, and then later on, possibly participating in a campaign of war, because most wars, again, are based on economics, and they're based on economics because one group cannot get access to economic resources, and because they can't get access to those economic resources through the system, they believe they have to take those resources. And that's where we're going to have these beta males talking about going to war in their own country, because many of these beta males, one, don't have the life skills to go out and get jobs in today's economy. And two, many of these men out here, including myself, we have been denied opportunities at employment in the job market, because the job market today is gynocentric, and you have females running the human resource department these days, and they are denying able-bodied men opportunities at employment in most of the jobs. Moreover, you have people who, and these wealthy people in corporations, what they're doing is denying men opportunities at employment, because instead of them going out of their way to invest in men, what they are doing is sending the jobs overseas that a lot of men used to have, and they're investing in women, and they're investing in overseas, but they're not investing in American men. And that's why a lot of men are frustrated. That's why a lot of men are angry. And that's why a lot of men are talking all of this civil war talk, because they feel that the country that they live in is not meeting their needs, and they feel like they have no place in the country due to the gynocentric culture that has been permeated through society over the last 50 years, a culture that has gone out of its way to devalue men and going out of its way to marginalize and minimize the role of men in America. And because these men feel marginalized and minimized, this is one of the things that could be a possible catalyst for your civil war, because these men, again, they are not getting what they want out of society, because society made these promises to them in Madison Avenue ads, Hollywood movies, and all sorts of media, telling them that if you do participate in this covert contract, that they would get all of this so-called success. But when they go out into the world, they find that all of the things that they were told by people like their single mothers and like the media, they're finding that it's not what they were told. So a lot of the beta males out there, these women told them things from their perspective of rose-colored glasses. They told them, oh, you'll be able to get this great job. You'll be able to get all these great women. And the media also told them you'll be able to get all of these attractive women and you'll be able to live this lifestyle. And what a lot of these guys are finding out is that none of that is happening. And again, that's leading to a lot of the beta male anger and the beta male rage out here going on. These guys find out that the world isn't what they were told it was. And now that they're finding out that the world is completely different, that's why they are just so angry. And that's why a lot of these guys are simmering and boiling in anger. And you hear all of this talk about all of this so-called civil war. They want to talk about war because a lot of these men were not taught those life skills that they need to survive in the world. Because one of the things that your feminists did was that was very destructive over the last 50 years was tell us that she could raise a boy to be a man on her own, and that we did not need fathers. And this was reinforced by your mainstream media and the wealthy at the top, who thought, oh, we don't need this father in the home. And they did not really want the father in the home for the following reason, because they wanted to have the woman in charge of the money, because they know that the woman is a consumer. And with the woman in charge of the home, what they can do is use her to get money out of the home to buy their products. And then she would teach that culture to their children, and the children would then go out here and become consumers themselves. So instead of your family run by the father teaching the son the male life skills that he needed, and things like learning how to do things like save money, invest money, and build, we had a bunch of people who learned to go out here and buy things for social currency. And the sad part about social currency is that it has no economic value, nor does it build wealth. Social currency, what it'll do is it will get you attention from others and approval of others, but it does not build economic value overall. And this is something that your beta male has learned, because when you have a beta male, this is a male who has learned how to submit to female authority figures and follow female authority figures. Moreover, he has learned how to think and act like a female. And this is one of the reasons why we have a man crisis today, is because your male has learned how to think like a female. And this is why he's talking about all of this war talk, because he doesn't know how to go out and survive in the world. He didn't have a father to go out here and teach him intangibles that were important, like a work ethic, nor did he have a father in his life to teach him how to do things like go out here and survive in the world, nor did he have a father in his life to teach him how to go out here and work on his own or how to develop the social skills a man needs to learn, because a man's social skills are completely different than the social skills of a female. Because a female, she can be passive because the man usually initiates contact, whereas the man has to learn how to be assertive because he has to go out and do for himself. And when you have boys who grew up like females, they are expecting others to come to them. And that's why a lot of these guys are just failing to launch, because they just don't know how to launch in the first place. Because these beta males, they were taught by their single mothers and even these gynocentric institutions like schools that somebody will do things for them. And that's just not how the world works for men. When it comes down to men, the world works completely different than it does for women. So men have to understand that the only person who's going to do for you is you, and this is something your beta males, they just have not learned. Thank you, Archaeopolis, for the donation, and thank you for starting the man crisis. What's up, Benny G? What's up, Tight End 45, Thinking Man, Courtney X, Mike. And the dude's thoughts. And this is something I'm doing. Again, I'm doing the show about the man crisis and civil war. And I'm going over the foundations of this civil war, because your beta male, again, he doesn't know how to do anything. And it's just like the men in the South after the Civil War. A lot of these men, they did not have any sort of life skills or survival skills after the Civil War, and they didn't know how to build. And this is why a lot of those men at the post-Civil War period, after the Reconstruction, they formed the Ku Klux Klan. Now, they formed the Ku Klux Klan because they saw all of these black people coming up, all of these black people building, all these black people creating. And this is the thing that made a lot of these beta white males extremely angry, was seeing all of these black people having success. But what they did not understand is that when it came down to the black people during the Civil War, a lot of those slaves, former slaves, they all had technical skills, and because they had technical skills, they could build. And because they had the ability to learn those technical skills, this is why they were able to create businesses. And this is why they were able to start moving forward once the war ended. Because if you have skills, and you can go out here and start building, but your beta male, in most cases, he does not have skills at all. He does not have hard skills, and he does not have soft skills, because when it comes down to today's beta male, he has been sold the gynocentric idea that if he has this college degree, he can go out here and get a job. And that's the idea that a woman has, because again, a woman is used to getting her needs met by men. So a woman, yeah, she can go get herself one of these little cheesy degrees in gender studies or jewelry design and get herself an office job, because there will always be a simp there who will give her a break and give her a high-priced job. But a man is going to be held to a different standard. And when men look at another man, they're going to ask a critical question: what is this man going to do for my company? And your beta male, he's sitting there with these cheesy degrees in gender studies, women's studies, and he has nothing to offer that other man. Even worse, he doesn't even know how to go out here and create a business for himself. Now, men, before we got into this whole college hype thing about college and jobs, a lot of guys out here, they learned how to do things like auto repair. They learned how to do construction. They learned how to do plumbing. So If with these trades, what they could do is, if they couldn't get hired at a company, they could go out here and start their own business. And that's what a lot of guys did when they found that their degrees weren't able to get them in the door. They would go out here and start businesses, and others wouldn't even bother with college. They would just go for their passions, and this is how they would start businesses. Like a lot of guys like Bill Gates, he didn't finish college. He loved computers. He started Microsoft, and these guys, they would go out here and they would start businesses based on their passions, and that's how they would go out here and make a living. And as they started their businesses, they would learn how, with their male life skills, how to adapt, how to change. And this is how they built lives for themselves. And your beta male, because he has been raised in this female-headed household and he has this one-track mind, he's still trying to make the college degree work. And because he can't make the college degree work, he is so angry and frustrated that that's, again, why he's talking about going to war with people, because he's so angry that he can't get his needs met. He can't make life work for him. And because he can't make his life work for him, what he wants to do is take from others and destroy other people's lives. And these guys, they want to do that because they just don't know how to make things work. Because what the beta males who talk all this Civil War talk don't understand is all the resources are still out there, and it's for them to have the vision and imagination to go out here and use those resources. But because they're beta males, they only think about things as related to getting the attention of women and the approval of women. And that's why they're not thinking in the long term, because they're mostly short term. So they sit there and they're talking about all of this talk about Civil War because they don't know how to create an economy for themselves. Now, the wealthy, yes, they have taken all of their jobs overseas. And yes, they have gone out here and hired all of these women to cut costs. And they have severed the covert contract they have had with many of these white males out here, where when they had this covert contract, they were looking to elevate the white male and create the whole concept of white supremacy, where they were going to create this ideal for white men. They were going to make sure white men were going to have all of these jobs and they were going to be living this middle class lifestyle. So the wealthy have rescinded their covert contract with white men. And that's why a lot of white men today are so angry, so frustrated, and why a lot of them are exploding in rage and participating in things like your mass shootings, or like the man in New Zealand participating in a massacre in the hopes of inciting a civil war. And these guys, they're living inside of their heads when they come up with these concepts of civil war. Just like your Elliot Rodger, he was sitting there talking about, how he wanted to go out here and kill all these people. They are inside of their heads. They're living in an imaginary place when they talk about this civil war. And they're sitting there talking about this stuff, buying all these guns and doing things, talking about they're making all of these plans to go to war and stuff. And they're doing this because they're living inside of their heads. And your beta male, he lives inside of his head talking about how he wants to go and have this civil war, and he wants to go out here and take out these other people and make America great again. And it's, again, this is all talk from the beta male's head, and it's something I talk about again in the Man Crisis, how the beta male lives inside of his head. He's collecting all these guns, and in his mind, he thinks that he's going to go out here and there's going to be this war. He's going to kill all these minorities and all these people who disagree with him, and then they will be able to have access to resources. And that's not the case at all. When you live in the real world, you understand that, yes, the world has changed, and you're not going to get anything in a civil war. And most of these beta males, because they have been raised by females, they are not even equipped to even survive in a civil war. So when I look at these beta males who make these statements they don't even know what they're asking for, and they don't even know what they would be getting themselves into. Because if you have a war, oftentimes that means that you just have whatever clothes are on your back. And in most cases, there is no water, no food, no electricity, no medicine. And it means that you are basically have to go out here and survive on your own. And most of these beta males, as I talked about in the man crisis, most of these guys, they're just not equipped for that kind of situation. Yes, they'll talk about that situation because they're living in the world of rose colored glasses where they imagine these scenarios from these video games like Call of Duty and your Battlefield or whatever they're called. And they're thinking that war is going to be like that, where they can play like a first person shooter, similar to that white supremacist in New Zealand who was streaming his murders of all of those Muslims. But in reality, if you have a war, again, there is no food, there is no water, there is no medicine. You have to sleep wherever you can find. You have to use the bathroom wherever you can find, and you are in a total Hades because you have people not you're not you have people shooting back at you, you have people throwing bombs at you, and these beta males, they don't understand the horrors of war because it's not like these mass shootings where these cowards walk into a place and just shoot at people who can't fight back. It's a situation where you're going to have people shooting back at you. And in most cases, you're going to have people who are better trained than you going out here to kill you. D. Woodward, the Upward on sales on the Man Crisis. I have sold 40 copies of the Man Crisis this month, and we are over 120, I believe, on sales. So it looks like we're getting a little bit of a surge from the Judge Joe Brown appearance, and that we're getting a lot of sales. I want to get more sales on it. I'm okay, Luciano, but I have the Man Crisis out here because a lot of guys need to understand what a civil war is and how bloody and dire a civil war is. And again, the beta males, they want civil war because they can't get access to resources and they can't get access to the jobs and the things that they were promised by their single mothers, Madison Avenue and Hollywood. And because they can't get access to those things, this is why they want to go to war to take those things. But again, the beta male is not equipped to survive in this world. I talk about that in the Man Crisis. If we were to take away his internet, take away his water, take away his food, take away his shelter, your beta male would not survive less than a week because your beta male, in many cases, even after they participate in these mass shootings, a lot of these men wind up committing suicide because they can't deal with the consequences of their actions. And these men, that's one of the reasons why they wind up committing suicide, because they just can't deal with the idea of going to prison for the rest of their life. So I have to wonder if we put these guys in a combat situation where there is nothing, I wonder how long they would be able to survive. You turn out the lights, these guys would fall apart. You turn off the water, they would fall apart. And these men know nothing about logistics. All they know is I've got an AR-15, I've got an AK-47, and they're not thinking about logistics like Bloody Pond Lives is talking about. They're not thinking about the logistics, and you have to know how much ammunition you have. You have to know how much rations you have. You have to know the terrain so you can know where things are. And you have to think about long-term goals like taking precious resources like a power plant or water. These are things that your beta male can't think about, but he's going to sit there and talk all this war talk, but he's not understanding about how things work in war. Because again, War is something that is done for economic reasons, and it's not done because you want to get some stuff to impress a woman. And that's one of the reasons, again, why your beta male primarily wants things, is because he wants to go out here and get stuff to impress females, because he is primarily looking for the attention and approval of women. And that's not the reason why people go out here and have wars. But the beta male, he thinks that this is a reason because he can't get his dream job where he can sit in an office and get this dream that his mother and his people have told him about. And I'm sorry, that's just not going to happen. And you just have to suck it up. And this is something your beta male doesn't understand in the world, is that, you know, you don't usually get what you want. Bloody Pondless makes a great point. Yeah, they think they can take on the U.S. government with just their AR-15s, and that's not going to work, because in the U.S. military, they have tanks, they have planes, and they have generals who can do strategy. And most of these so-called militiamen, or these guys who are sitting around here and they're making these big plans, oh, we're going to take this and we're going to take that. And you have to get past all of this security, and you also have to get past all of these military trained people who they're going to be fighting you a lot harder. And a lot of these guys, even if they have been well trained with these little guns, that's nothing compared to a military that has tremendous resources and also has lots and lots of capital. This is what destroyed the South in the Civil War, is that the North, one, had manufacturing to manufacture weapons like the Monitor and the Merrimac, the first two. Well, no, the Monitor, I think, was the first warship. And they also had economic connections to go out here and do things like they had the diplomatic connections with Europe, and they had diplomatic connections with Asia, and they understood that their trade connections could provide them with more resources, because what was happening with the North was they understood that things were changing. We had the Industrial Revolution. The British were colonizing Asia. They were colonizing Africa, and they were moving from this agricultural model that the South enjoyed to a more industrial one. And what's happening now in America is we are moving from the service economy that your President Clinton established to an information-based economy. And the big problem with the beta male is he's still trying to make this service model work. And that's why we see things like this so-called fight for 15. And that's just not going to work, because anybody who understands economics understands that once you raise the minimum wage for a job, then what companies are going to do is cut hours, and that's going to have a negative impact on the economy. And that's the other thing that we have in the man crisis. We have a lot of these beta males still trying to make these minimum wage jobs into middle class jobs. And because they can't create new jobs, what they want to do is go out here and make these jobs into middle class jobs when they were never meant to be middle class jobs. A job in McDonald's was always meant to be a job that you just come in, get started. It's meant for a teenager just to learn basic work ethic skills and basic work skills. And it was meant to help that young man learn how, or young woman, learn how the world of work worked. They were learning how to basic work skills like being on time, completing a task. It was never meant to be a career. But you have the beta male. He's trying to put this square peg in the round hole, talking about a fight for 15. And he's failing miserably, because all that's doing is leading to inflation. Thank you, Cathode Ray 60, for the donation. I really appreciate it. I'm hoping to get the Indiegogo going. Right now, it's in a state of flux, but I'm just going to trust God. If it gets funded, it gets funded. If not, I'll try to find another way to get the book published. And the beta male doesn't understand that minimum wage job was not designed to be a career. It was meant to be a starting point. You work there for maybe 6 months, a year at most, and then after that, they um, move on to the next job. But the beta male, he doesn't know how to move on because one of the big problems with the beta male is he doesn't know how to transition. And because he doesn't know how to transition, he doesn't know that when something ends, you have to start something else. And when you start something else, you have to move to that next thing. And that's why the beta male stagnates and can't go anywhere. And that's why he gets angry at others who move on. Luciano asks a good question. Why do beta males rely on validation instead of self-actualization? And that is because your beta male was raised in a female-headed household or a home with a beta male father. And in that home, it's all about getting the attention and approval of the woman. And because there is no father there to teach that boy male life skills, his model is the woman, and the woman teaches him that it's all about getting her attention and approval and not about accomplishing goals. Now, when there's a father in the home, the boy learns that it's about him going out here to set a goal, achieve a goal, and accomplish a goal. And this is something that the beta male doesn't understand. And this is one of the things that your beta male, he can't get because he was never taught that skill, because only a man who has a father in his life is going to learn, or other male figures in his life is going to learn, that he cannot rely on people's validation to go out in the world, because that's going to make him codependent. He has to start working on setting goals he wants to achieve in life, and he has to work on starting to work on making efforts to actualize those goals if he hopes to move forward. And Bloody Pond Lives makes another great point that about these beta males and their war talk, and that, yeah, B-52 can fly over you, you wouldn't hear them. And yeah, the military is just too powerful, but these beta males, they're going to talk about how they're going to go to war, but they just, again, don't have the resources to do that. And one of the big problems is, again, the greed of the rich, like Titan is talking about. Yeah, they have destroyed everything by sending our jobs overseas and hiring women, but the only way men can fight back is by making an investment in men. And that's one of the solutions I talk about in the man crisis, is that we have to start investing in men. And men have to understand that we are on our own, and we have to go out here and make that investment in ourselves, because the government isn't making an investment in men. Big business isn't making an investment in men. If we take a look at the Gillette ad, they're not making an investment in men. So men have to go out here and make an investment in ourselves. And the only way we're going to do that is if we start by starting to do things like learning a philosophy of putting ourselves first, and we have to start learning on setting goals for what we want to do. So this is something that the beta male doesn't understand, and this is why he goes to the extreme of war, because he doesn't understand that you don't need to go to war with the wealthy. You need to just create your own wealth, because in the days of the robber barons, we had these old money millionaires from the Standard Oil days, and they had all the resources at the turn of the century. And what a lot of people did was they said, okay, these people have all the resources and they're controlling all this money, so I have to find a new way to do things. And that's how we got new money. And the new money, they adapted, and because they adapted, they found new ways to create wealth. And that's what your beta male doesn't know how to do. He doesn't understand that he has to go out here and create new businesses, create new marketplaces, because what's going to happen is the old businesses, they are going to die. And I can honestly say that they're going to die, because when you have a gynocentric foundation and a company filled with women, what they're going to do is suck all the resources out of that company. Because if you have a company filled with beta males and women, they are not about taking risks. They are not about creating new markets. They are not about creating new products, because women by nature, they want to be secure. And because beta males and women want to be secure, they don't want to take risks. Now, this is what's happening in Hollywood right now. This is why we keep getting remake after remake after remake of movies from 30 years ago instead of people going out here and creating new products, because you have a lot of women and beta males in charge, and they'd rather make the same movies 4 and 5 times over rather than create something new and create something original. Thank you for coming. Good night, good thinking man of 1978. I understand that um, everybody doesn't have time, but what they want to do is keep making the same products over and over, and the audience is outgrowing those products. The audience, that generation that watched those products in Hollywood, they're no longer interested in those products. For example, I did a whole video talking about how Hollywood wants to make a Ghostbusters movie, but all the Gen Ys, millennials, and Gen Zs, they see Danny Phantom as the character they want to see. And what's happening is that you have people still walking about they want to make a third Ghostbusters movie, but there are all these Danny Phantom fans out here who are saying, I want to see a Danny Phantom movie, and nobody wants to make that for me. And that's what was frustrating for them. And that's, again, part of that gynocentric culture because, one, women, when they're in the workplace, they nest. And two, beta males, when they're in an office, they nest as well because they want to play it safe. And this is another thing that is a part of the man crisis, because men, as builders, we don't want to play it safe. We don't want to nest. We don't want to be comfortable. We want to come out of the box. We want to come out of our comfort zone. And we want to go out here and challenge ourselves, because that's how men go out here and create new things. And when you have a whole 2 or 3 generations of beta males, they are not interested in going out here to create and build. What they are interested in is comfort. And this is the way we have so many beta males out here. They're more into sitting on their sofa playing video games because they have this feminine mindset and they have this feminine idea and feminine way of life that they want to live. So they don't want to grow up to be men. They want to go out here and act just like women. And because they want to be just like a woman, what they want to do is sit there and wait for somebody to give them something rather than go out here and go and get it. And that, again, is why we're going to have an economic crisis, because with these people working in corporate America, they are not bringing profits to corporate America by creating new markets. They're not creating new markets, and that's why people just aren't out here buying products, because the products you keep making are the exact same products and people are outgrowing them. The generations are changing. But when you have beta males and females, they just keep thinking they can continue to sell you something from somebody from 30 years ago rather than create a new market for people. I'll leave a link to the man crisis. Try to leave it. Oh, that was not letting me do it. Okay, not let me do it, but you can get the Man Crisis on Amazon.com. And I just expanded the distribution to the Man Crisis. And you can get that on the iBookstore and Smashwords and Barnes & Noble as well. So the Man Crisis is now on every platform, and you can get it on every platform. And again, your beta male, he doesn't know how to do anything. He doesn't want to create new things. So he's sitting there thinking, oh, I need to get money. But again, if the big companies don't want to give you money, you have to go out here and create your own. Thank you, Turk, for the donation. I really appreciate it. But you have to find marketplaces and products that they aren't producing and produce them. For example, when I started the SJS Direct Imprint, I saw that they weren't making the types of African-American stories that I wanted to see. So I started creating my own stories because I wanted to see more positive stories about the African-American experience. And I wanted to see more diversity, because at the time, all we had to these books talking about the single, successful, well-educated Black woman. And I said, I want to do different types of stories. I want to do stories about Black-owned business. I want to do stories about Black history. I want to do stories about Black fantasy and science fiction. And I wanted to do books on screenplays. And so I saw that there were markets for these types of books, and I wanted to go out here and publish them. And that's what a person who is creative does. They say, okay, yes, there are books out here, but they're not making the kind of books I want to see, or I believe that there's an audience for. So they go out here and take the risk and go out here and make those books themselves, or they go out here and create the products themselves. But your beta male, he's too scared to take that risk because he's thinking about what's more socially acceptable than thinking about going out here and taking a risk on himself. And he wants to be popular rather than be productive, because sometimes going out here and creating a product means you're going to have to deal with resistance. You're going to have to deal with people hating you. You're going to have to deal with people telling you it's not going to work. And I've run into that myself. I remember when I was writing Spellbound, I was told that, oh, there's no such thing as Black Goths. And I was writing Spinsterella, there's no such thing as Black Goths. Goths worship the devil, all this stuff. But I still went out here. I wrote the book, published the book, and I took that risk, and I got the reward by people in the goth subculture supporting me and people in the goth subculture helping me to get the word out about the books. And when I started doing men's issues books, a lot of time there were no books about Black men's issues out there or men's issues out there. And I started writing those books because I was doing the blogs, and the blogs were popular. And I said, okay, I'm going to take these blogs and turn them into a book. And I did the first Stop Simping. That did well. Did the Manginas, which did extremely well. I got over 1,000 downloads on the free one. And then I did Misadventures of Captain Saberho the same year. And yeah, it was rocky in the beginning, but as I'm starting to learn that, yeah, there is starting to become a men's issues platform. But again, you have to take the risk. And again, beta male, he always wants to play it safe. He always wants to go buy the book. And this is why he loses. And that's why he would probably lose a civil war, because when it comes down to your beta male, yeah, he's going to buy all these AR-15s. He's going to buy all of these guns. And what he's going to do is talk about how he's going to wage this war as he sees in a video game or a movie. And he's not going to win because he doesn't understand the reality of things. He doesn't understand how things work. And he doesn't understand how things operate. So everything is just going to fall apart for him because he doesn't understand how to come out of the box, because the beta male, he lives in a box. And that's one of the big reasons why he never really achieves any sort of success and why he would possibly lose a civil war. Let me see. I'm going to read. Hey, Chris. Chris Brown is the creator of the Omega Black manga. It's a great manga. I really wish you guys would go out here and pick it up. It's one of the best comics I've read over the last year. And I urge you to go pick that one up. And he's a guy, he's taking a risk because Black manga, a lot of people, they don't know about it, but he's taking a risk and he's growing. And that's how you grow, is by finding new markets, finding new businesses. If you can't work in the old businesses, then you go to work creating your own business. It's like what Tony Brown said in an episode of Tony Brown's Journal, which stayed with me. I saw it in my early teens or my 20s. He said, if you can't get a job, what you do is you make one. And that's how a lot of guys, if they couldn't get their degree to work for them, they would go out here and they would make a job, and they would do things like little things that they had that they loved, and they would turn that into a business. I mean, Jeff Bezos, he didn't become a billionaire by just one day opening Amazon. He ran Amazon right out of his garage. And that's how he turned it into $1 billion business. Just like what I'm doing with SJS Direct. It's a company I run out of my bedroom with an internet connection, but that's how you start doing things. And this is something, again, your beta male doesn't want to do, because your beta male wants a smooth world. He wants to do what will cause him no problems, what will have no obstacles. He doesn't want to take on any challenges. And he wants to do what will be socially acceptable. For him, he wants a job at a big name company so he can look like a big shot, but he doesn't understand that in order to get success, it means you're going to have to not work for somebody, but you're going to have to start doing work for yourself. And the work you're going to have to do for yourself, it's going to be very rough work. And that's where we're going to see the beta males who talk about civil war start to fall apart because, again, in a war situation, there is no there's no internet, so you can't talk about logistics. There is no water, so you can't even wash yourself. There is no food. There is nothing. And again, these men have no survival skills, so they would crumple into complete dust if there was a war situation. You're welcome, Chris. I will. One of the things I'm going to do is keep promoting your Omega Black because that's how you get the readers, and that's one of the things I want to do for you because I love your work and I want to keep sharing it with others, and I want to build that word of mouth because that word of mouth that's going to get you the readers, and it's going to help you build your audience. So I'm going to keep talking about it at every live stream and that I do because I want more people to know about it. And I also want them to know you have an Indiegogo going where you're trying to raise funds for Omega Black #3. And I really wish you guys would go out here and pledge to that one because it's a great project. And I want to see this one go to the finish. Luciano's asking on golf culture. I have never been to Hot Topic, so I don't know about it. There hasn't been a Hot Topic here in New York. Yeah, Robert, that's a big problem with Bezos is that, yeah, he gave his but Bezos is a beta male, so he would give his platform to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez instead of understanding and appreciating all of the hard work that went into building that platform, because that platform was not built by anything but hard work. It was about him finding a marketplace because back then the internet was nothing. I remember in the 90s you had the 56K modem and the internet was nothing at the time. But your Jeff Bezos, because he had the vision and a little bit of courage, he went out here and built Amazon into a major industry. And this is something that today's beta males, they just don't know how to do. They don't see the markets out here. A lot of them, they're sitting there online thinking of the internet as entertainment. Yeah, they'll go on Instagram and take pictures. They'll be on Instagram or on Facebook having beefs with people, but they will never think, hey, you can use Facebook as a tool to sell products, or you can use Instagram as a tool to sell products. Now, when I have an Instagram and I have a Facebook, but I use them to promote books. And I use them to try to sell books. Like recently, I started putting my ads for my books on Instagram, and it's had a really positive response. And I've also been using Facebook to try to reach audiences. So one of the big problems with your beta male is that he has this perception of things that really messes him up. Again, it's that rose-colored glasses. He only sees things one way, and he doesn't understand you have all these tools in front of you, and you can use those tools to build yourself up. But because he doesn't know how to build, he takes those same tools and uses them for consumption rather than production. And this is the other big problem with your beta male is he has all these tools in front of him, and because he does not have vision or imagination, this is why he'll sit there playing a video game instead of buying a computer to go out here and create a video game. That was something I saw in an Essence magazine many years ago where they talked about people out here. They said one person will go out here and buy their kid a TV to watch NYPD Blue, whereas one parent will buy their kids a computer to create an NYPD Blue. And that's one of the things I learned back in the 90s that stayed with me, because that was one of the reasons why I always wanted a computer, because I could go out here and create something. And when you create something, you then have a resource and a product you can use to bring to the marketplace. But your beta male, he's the guy waiting in line for the next Call of Duty or the next Battlefield, instead of trying to go out here and get the computer software that will help him go out here and create something like a book, like The Man Crisis, or go out here and do things like what I'm trying to do with this Indiegogo that I'm trying to run to produce the first SJS Direct comic book and the first ISIS graphic novel. Um, right now, I have $360 raised, and I'm trying to get to $25,000. I don't know if I'll get there, but that's one of the goals that I set for myself because I see these tools around me, but your beta male, because he thinks from one extreme to the other, he can't see the tools in front of him. No, what he does is he wants to talk about how he wants to go to war because he doesn't have those skills to go out here and do for himself, nor does he have the skills to go out here and get his needs met. This is the big problem with your beta male, and that's why he's sitting there with his arsenal of guns, where he's spending money on guns. One second. He's sitting there with this arsenal of guns in his room and talking about how he's going to go and wage this war because he learned how to use guns on a video game, but he's not talking about going out here to build, which is what men know how to do when they have fathers in their lives. And they have males who can teach them male life skills, because building is something a man can do naturally, because that's just what God created a man to do. He created a man to go out here and build, and he created a man to work. But your beta male doesn't know how to do this because he has been raised by a female. You're welcome, Chris. I want to do everything to help you get your Indiegogo funded, and if I can ever do anything, you can leave the link. It'll be great, because every great comic needs to be supported, and we need to get the word out about great comics. I've left the link to my own Indiegogo up there, and if you want to again donate to that, I would really appreciate it. But your beta male, he doesn't understand that the tools are here. He doesn't have to go to war, and he doesn't need to go out and get a gun. What he needs to do is learn how to adapt. And this is another thing that beta males don't know how to do, because the female doesn't know how to adapt, because the female is someone who is used to getting her needs met by men. Because you're female, all she has to do is put on some clothes, put on some makeup, and there will be, if depending on how attractive she is, some dude out here who will pay attention to her, and that dude will go out here and give her whatever she wants. And this is the big mistake that your wealthy made when they signed up with feminism. They thought, oh, they were going to get all this money from the female. Unfortunately, the males, because they have learned how to be like females, these men, they have lost all of their masculinity, and they've lost all their male life skills. And that's going to have another major impact on America's economy, because if these men can't create new businesses to replace the old ones, we're going to wind up again in an economic crisis. Because when you have businesses run by females and beta males, they turn into fiefdoms, because when it comes down to females and beta males, they, one, don't want to take risks, and two, they don't want to take any responsibility. And men, primarily, they do take responsibility out here, and that's why they go out here and take risks, because they want rewards. Whereas females and beta males, they don't want rewards, they don't want responsibility, and that's why every place that they're in winds up falling apart. For example, when we take a look at your ghetto, the reason why it's a ghetto is because your beta males, one, don't have any male life skills, and two, they don't know how to build. Hi, Rob IS. They don't know how to build, and because they don't know how to build, that's why nothing gets built. And then because your beta males get jealous of other males, that's why everything that somebody else tries to build, they wind up tearing down. For example, this is why whenever somebody tries to build something in places like the Black community, we have all these gangs who come into the community, and they'll sit there and talk about how they have this turf But none of these men will ever talk about building anything. What they will do is sit there and live off the females on social programs, but they will not build anything. And then when brothers try to go out here and build anything, what they will do is hate those men, like I talk about in the man crisis, and they will try to mark those men for death, even though those men are bringing things to the community and they're trying to build for the community and they're trying to help the community. But the gangsters, they primarily work for the females and they perpetuate the gynocentrism in the community. And just like these beta males who have all these guns talking about civil war, all these urban terrorists, what they do is they oppress people in their own community and prevent their communities from actualizing their potential. They kill off the best and brightest people due to their jealousy and anger. And they don't want to see anything grow because everything they get primarily comes from the welfare state and it comes from the female. And they'll sit there and talk about how they're a man, but these men don't want to do any sort of work. All they want to do is live off a female. And again, that just shows how feminine your gang members are. And again, it shows how also feminine your so-called militiamen and other beta males are. They live off of females, but they talk all this war talk. And again, most of these guys wouldn't last 5 minutes in a real combat situation. They talk about civil war, but they have no ideas on how things work because they never had to work because their mothers coddle them and the people in their lives give them a pass when they need to hold them accountable for their actions. And Luciano asks, why do racists and gangsters hate successful black men? Well, they hate successful black men because, one, successful black men have confidence, and two, successful black men have the courage to go out here and take risks. And when it comes down to the racist, he hates the black man because the black man is proving that the ideas he has are being refuted regarding black people. Now, when it comes down to your racists and white supremacists, they want to live in a smooth world. And in order for them to have their smooth world where there are no conflicts, no obstacles, and no problems, your racist male, he needs for the black man to be at the bottom of the world. So if this black man is poor, miserable, and struggling, then that white man feels comfortable about his place in the world. And he wants to feel like he's the one on top of the world. And this is why he hates it, the idea of a black man when he comes in well-dressed in a suit and a tie, because that refutes all the ideas he has about black men and all the perceptions he has about black men, because the racist, he has an idea that everybody needs to be a stereotype in order for him to be comfortable in the world. So black people need to be janitors, black people need to be in the bottom jobs. Your Hispanics, they need to be picking fruits and living in the barrio. Your Asians need to be working in the laundry or the Chinese restaurant. And your Indians need to work in computers. And your Jews need to work as lawyers. That's his idea of an idyllic world, but that's not how the real world works. But your beta male, he needs these people in these places to feel comfortable. And that's just, again, not how the world works. But the beta male wants to make that the smooth world. But the reality is that's not how the world. The same thing with the social justice warrior. They also want the smooth world. And that can be seen in many of these so-called SJW Marvel books, where they have, and many other SJW books, as they're called, where they, again, you see the smooth world, you see all of the stereotypes, and you don't see people becoming people. Rabbi, yes, everybody is working on developing a way to get the man crisis out there. We're building, I mean, people are just spreading the book out with word of mouth. I've done appearances on Obsidian and Judge Joe Brown. And the more you guys talk about the man crisis, the more popular the book will become. The more you share the book with others, the more greater popular it will become, because this man crisis, this is a big problem in America. It's a problem no one wants to talk about. And it's a problem that could plague America, because we have this whole population of beta males who, again, they did not get the life skills that they need to survive in the world. And because they don't have the life skills, many of these men are falling completely apart. And that's why they are going out here and participating in this spectrum of violent behaviors, from doing things like yelling at a woman who says that she didn't like him, all the way to we having these mass shootings, and now this speculative talk of civil war, where we have these beta males talking about going to try to wage war. When you look at these beta males, they'll sit there and talk about this war, not understanding the consequences and ramifications. Now, in the Bible, it states that you need to count the cost before you get into things. But when it comes down to the beta male, he never counts the cost of anything, because he does everything based on feelings. So these guys, they're sitting there talking about civil war, not understanding what they're going to do to the country. And this is the big problem with your beta male. He's talking about this stuff, and he sounds just like a lot of the gang members out there. And those gang members, what they would do is, oh, they talking about the turf and how they're going to build a neighborhood up, and the neighborhood stays in shambles because these men, they can't work together, and they can't think critically, they can't solve problems. And this is a big problem with the beta males. That's what happens with the gangs. They have large amounts of turf, but they never build anything like the mafia, because the mafia, they at least, even though these crime families don't like each other, they can put their differences aside to work towards a common goal. But your gang members, they can't do this. They'll sit there and talk about how they're gangster and they're running things, but they can't really run their own lives, because females run everything for them. Females pay their bills, females buy their clothes. And yes, they might have a little drug business here or there, a little hustle here or there, but these men primarily are just like women living in the house. They think they have the power, but they have been completely emasculated by the females in their neighborhood, because the lease on that Section 8 apartment is in her name. That car he's driving around is her car. Those clothes he has are her clothes, and he owns absolutely nothing. And your gang member will think that he's a man, but he is a man in crisis, because if that woman puts him out, then he has absolutely nothing. It's like David Carroll talked about in one of his videos, the hobosexual. This guy is basically a hobo living in in a woman's house, and all she has to do is go out here and not want him there anymore and get rid of him, and that's the end of him. And he's just going to be out here on the street begging for change and begging for anything that he can get. And what's happening with this beta male is, again, he just doesn't understand what it means to be a man. He doesn't understand the skills to be a man. And in many cases, he winds up pushing away the very men who could help him, because he has been miseducated by these females to think that a man is his enemy. And a man is not another man's enemy. In many cases, a man is the only ally you will ever have to be able to help you. Because if it wasn't for me listening to a lot of brothers here on YouTube, I would, after I lost my job 10 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to have come to an understanding about men's issues to start writing men's issues books or to get an understanding about things as related to my life because I started 10 years ago out of a job and I started working on doing things with the fiction, but then I started doing men's issues blogs and that was added to my nice guy research from what I was doing then. And again, I started doing that as an effort to help men because I saw so many guys out here who didn't know about the basics. And I thought it was just nice guy syndrome, but I saw that nice guy syndrome is a symptom of the way we were raising boys here in America. And the way we are raising boys is creating dysfunctional males who just don't know how to be men. Because we thought 50 years ago we could raise a boy on it with a single mother and that she could raise a boy to become a man. But there were numerous life skills a boy learns from a man about being a man. Most boys over the last 2 to 3 generations have not received. And one of the things I try to do in the man crisis, in addition to talking about the problem, is show you the numerous life skills that you didn't get and show you what you need to know so that you can go out here and try to start laying a plan for yourself to survive. And I also do that in other books that I've written, like Stop Simping and your Stop Simping in the Workplace, your Manginas, your Misadventures of Captain Save-A-Ho. I do all those books so that men can start getting the knowledge that they need to go out here and be able to survive. Because when it comes down to our gynocentric media, it's always talking about how we want this good man, but single mothers just can't raise a boy to become a good man. You need a father to be out here to raise a boy to become a man. And because we haven't had boys raised with fathers in the home, that's why we've gotten all of these soft males, and that's why all of these soft males are just crumbling out here. Black Sand, you just need to you just have to buy it because when it comes down to libraries, they're not going to pick this up because a lot of librarians they get mad. They're like, "Oh, it's a self-published book. We don't want to buy it." So the only way you're going to get this book is you're going to have to buy it. So when it comes down to the libraries, because I worked in a library and a guy he saw a self-published book, he got mad, he didn't want to take it. But the only way you can usually get it is to buy it. So that's the only way a lot of guys are getting the man crisis. But the information in here, it will change your life. Thank you, IMEV. I think you're going to enjoy Legendary Mad Matilda. That's the middle book of the Spinsterella trilogy, and it's the one where the Matilda Crowley character grows. And in that book, I show how important the knowledge that she got from her father in Spellbound helps her, and I also show how her father in some ways helps her. The story is a little bit more about her relationship with her mother, but the father is in there as well. And when I'm in all my books, like the Thetas, Legendary Mad Matilda, Spinsterella, I always show you the father's role on the daughter's side because that's something that we also need to see because fathers, they help boys to become men and they also help girls to see a model of manhood that they can see for the man they want to choose. And that's why a lot of women are choosing these bums is because they don't see a model of man out here. And that model of man is the thing that they need to see so they can know who to pick for a boyfriend or who to pick for a potential husband. But the libraries, they're not going to pick up books like Man Crisis because it just doesn't fit the gynocentric narrative because a lot of librarians, they're females and they don't really want to see books as related to building and empowering young men. Okay. So it's more, most of these institutions are gynocentric institutions. You have to understand public schools are gynocentric, libraries are gynocentric, and a lot of our institutions are not geared towards men. You can even look at it in the media, a lot of this stuff. That's why we see all these bumbling, stumbling dads. Brian, I believe the opioid crisis is possibly due to displacement in some careers, but yeah, because a lot of guys they lose their job, they become frustrated, and some guys I could talk about it in the man crisis. They do turn to drugs because they don't know how to cope, they don't know how to adapt, and a lot of guys like myself, what happens is once they lose their job, they don't know where to go. And I remember myself after I lost my job at City College, I was bouncing around their hiring pools and for 3 years. I took another civil service test and I bounced around them for 3 years. And what happened was I didn't understand the gynocentric control of the human resources department. And after the third year, I started saying, there's clear pattern of discrimination here against men, and that happens in the job market because human resources is primarily controlled by women, and they use their female own group preference to avoid hiring men. Some women don't want to hire men because they fear that this man, because he has a natural competitive nature, will do better than they do. And a lot of women, they want to be comfortable on the job. And they know if they bring that man on the job, he's going to be competitive. So in most cases, they don't want to bring men in the job unless they're completely emasculated beta males because they know they can get the beta male to do their work for them. Now, this is something I talk about in the man crisis, and it's also something I talk about in Stop Simping in the workplace. I talk about how a lot of women love having simps on the job because the simp, he will do the work for the female, and that will allow her to keep her job and it will allow her to maintain a mediocre standard in the job because that will allow her to continue getting paid at his expense because the beta male, he's so busy looking for attention and approval from females that he's not thinking about trying to take a risk like, oh, I've worked here for 5 or 10 years, let me go start laying the foundations for my own business. And Joshua asks a very good question. Do you believe that shows like The Simpsons played a part in ruining the man's role? Yes, I definitely do believe that. And I talk about that in an early chapter of The Man Crisis. Much of this media is gynocentric. And when feminists took control over the culture, they made the media to be gynocentric. And part of that media is creating this bumbling, stumbling dad. And that bumbling, stumbling dad, what it did was minimize the role of men, minimize what contributions men give to society, and it taught people to devalue men. And that happened all throughout the late 1970s and 1980s. And we've gone from the bumbling, stumbling dad that we saw in The Simpsons and movies like Mr. Mom, all the way to the stupid, incompetent man we see today on shows like Two and a Half Men, Family Guy, and we see a complete devaluation of men. And that's something I learned as I was watching. I was sitting there when TV went digital, and they started running these sub channels. They used to run these old 50s and 60s shows, and I said, "Wow, there's a major difference between the way they depicted men from about the 1950s and all the way up until the mid 1970s." And I started to see that from the 50s all the way up to the 70s, we started to see, this strong masculine man, and we started to see a complete value to men in society. And the turning point I saw really was the 1960s show Bewitched, where we started to see this turn towards presenting men as stupid and incompetent because your Darren Stevens, he was always presented as not being as smart as the women, and the women having this attitude of superiority towards Darren. And as I started to get older, when I was a kid, I used to think Bewitched was fun. But then as I got older, I started to see how this show was a complete insult to men. And then as I started to get into my late 30s, early 40s, as I was watching Cozy TV and Antenna TV, I started to see how this was pushing the narrative because as I started watching other shows where they were pushing this so-called sensitive guy, I started to see where they were just devaluing men. And we have gone over 40 years in media just seeing this complete insult to men. And the feminists, they keep pushing this agenda and they think that people are going to watch these soft males. But I can't watch TV anymore because these soft males, they are a complete insult to anybody who really understands what men do and what men contribute to society. Yeah, James Evans was like one of the last strong masculine black men, Travis. He was, and then they killed him off. He was one of those masculine men out here. And yeah, Hawk got canceled. All the shows that featured masculine men, feminists don't want people to support. And whenever you see a masculine man, like recently with Luke Cage, they make efforts to get him off the air. And then when you see what Netflix did was they softened the males by making them more gynocentric, like with Punisher season 2. They completely emasculated Frank Castle. They emasculated Jigsaw, and they made it about the women when it was supposed to be a struggle between these men. And we're not seeing, strong masculine males, which is the model that we're supposed to see so that boys can learn a model for manhood. And we're not seeing that on mainstream media. And that's why so many men are turning to places like YouTube and Facebook, because they want to see those images of masculine men. They want that model for masculinity, and they're not getting that on the media. Governor of the Death Star asks, these Democratic candidates, I don't see any of them as strong, and I think all of them are going to get beat by Trump. They all look like jobbers, and it reminds me of Walter Mondale and Geraldine Ferraro in 1984. And if you want to know about that election, you can look it up on Wikipedia. Your Walter Mondale in 1984 was Jimmy Carter's vice president. He decided to run against Ronald Reagan. And what happened was your Walter Mondale, because he was Jimmy Carter's vice president, and we had a major recession in 1978-79, what happened was your Walter Mondale got destroyed by Ronald Reagan. He only won one state, and it was a 49-state landslide. So that's what's going to happen, I believe, to the Democratic challenger, because none of these Democratic challengers are really presenting a strong argument to beat Trump, because I believe Trump is a beatable president, but you have to present a strong argument to beat your Donald Trump more than, oh, he's just Donald Trump. You need to present what you are going to offer the country. And that was Hillary Clinton's big mistake. She wanted to push Barack Obama's legacy, and Barack Obama's legacy did nothing for anyone. So that's why she lost. And when I look at your Donald Trump, again, I see him as a beatable candidate, because if you can come up with a plan, you can beat him. And I believe the plan that needs to be out here is one talking about investing in men. And that's something that would be the strongest argument, but because we have so many female voters out there, they're going to say, oh, we can't have a platform that talks about investing in men. But I believe it can be sold to people, because if we do not invest in our men, we are not going to have a country, because it is men who build the country. It is men who go out here and create new marketplaces. It is men who go out here and create businesses. And it is men, when they create these businesses, that create jobs from people. And it is your men who go out here and keep things going, because in order for a man to survive, he needs to be able to work. So he has an incentive to go out here and protect things, preserve things. And this is something that your female voter base doesn't understand. They're just looking for free stuff. They're looking for things like your Obamacare, or they're looking for a tax cut. And your beta males, they're looking for a tax cut as well. But your men, they need to be invested in. And again, I don't see that coming from the government. I see that coming from the men themselves. And we have to understand, again, I believe that's the platform that I believe could galvanize the country, because when I look at the sad state of our boys and them participating in mass shootings and the increased frequency of mass shootings, we need an investment in men. We need an investment in the development of men. And we need a platform where we can get boys to understand the male life skills they need to survive, because we have spent so long investing in girls, and that really hasn't paid off. It's like I talk about in The Man Crisis. For every dollar that is spent to invest in women, we spend $1,000 more afterward, and we're getting losses on these women, and they're just creating companies that are being going bankrupt. They're also running institutions like our public schools into the ground, and they're just not bringing any sort of return on investment long term. But if you invest in a man, what it will do is they will go out here and they will build, they will go out here and create businesses, they will go out here and create new jobs, create new markets, because every dollar you spend on a man is going to bring a higher return on investment. When you invest in women, what they do is, because they are consumers, that you have to wind up spending more money on them. Whereas if you invest in a man, he takes the money he has, he saves it, and then he goes out here and uses it as capital to create new businesses, which creates new jobs, which creates new profits, which benefits the economy in the long term. Thank you, Shawn Dog 1914, for the donation. I really appreciate it. I appreciate every donation you guys give me on the super chat. I'm going to use that money for book covers, and I'm going to use it for promoting books, and I'm going to try to use it to do whatever I can. And again, this man crisis is something I really want to work on, because we really need to do something about this man crisis. Because if we don't invest in our men, usually what's going to happen is, again, we're going to be economically poor, because these beta males, like in the ghettos, they just don't do anything except sit on a sofa. And if all of your men are sitting on a sofa, then your economy is just going to stagnate, because when you have all the women in the job, they are just going to do things that make them comfortable and not compete. And that's going to hurt the overall economy overall. So, yeah, I remember that time, Tony. I grew up in that time where, yes, fathers used to be seen as somebody that you respected. And yes, your fathers out here, they had flaws, but you still respected them because they were men. And a lot of mothers, they used to teach their sons to respect their fathers, because when you see women talking about, the big piece of chicken is for the father, or wait till your father comes home, what she is doing is showing her respect for male authority. And she is showing that boy that a man is valued. And this man, he used to be valued just in God's order, because he was considered God's steward and he was God's head of the family. So your man used to be a valued part of society. Unfortunately, thanks to feminists, we don't see that value, because feminists don't believe in God, nor do they believe in God's order. And they want to replace God's order, and they want to redefine manhood. And this is one of the things they want to do. And that's why we don't see fathers as respected, because feminists taught us that we should hate men and we should hate fathers, and that fathers should not be in the home. And that's one of the reasons why we have all the Civil War talk, because these boys never learned how to value fathers. They never learned how to value men. And because they never learned how to value men, this is why they want to destroy the world around them. And this is why they want to destroy the world, because they don't see a place for themselves. And because they don't see a place for themselves, they want to go out here and take whatever they want, because no one has taught them to go out here and get their own. Yeah, I do remember the guy from the Proud Family. He was a complete beta, and that was sad to see. That's what they do. They put these fathers in here, and they're complete clowns, and that's not something we need to see. And that's something, when I do my work, books like Spellbound, Spinsterella, Thetas, even the Isis and Esteem series, I try to show you a strong father. I try to show you why men need to be respected. I try to show you that a man is important. I even do it in books like Esteem, The Sands of Time, and many of the ISIS books. I try to show that the father is an important person. He is a person we need to value, because this is the being God made first. This is the steward over the earth, and he has a significant and important role in God's natural order. Rob, I haven't thought about entering politics, because politics is a dirty business. As I see it, what I want to do is teach men, because politics, as I see it, it's not really something I would want to do. I would create a platform, but I wouldn't want to be a politician. I would rather give the politician the platform, because when you have economic power, then you can use that political power to have people do what you need them to do. Shawn Dog makes a good point. Yeah, men keep trying to be a good man, and that's a gynocentric concept, because the whole idea of the good man was designed by Madison Avenue and Hollywood, and that idea was meant to create a man who would appease and please women, not a man who would learn a standard of being a man under God. So that's the type of man that your good man is. He's good for the woman. He is not good for God's standard. He's not doing work for God. He is doing what pleases the woman, and that's not what God wants a man to do. He created a man to do his work on earth, and that's the big problem with today's beta male who's grown up under this feminist narrative. Is he's trying to please a woman, and God did not make the woman to make you to please the woman. He made the man to please God, and he made the man to do the work of God. Luciano, I haven't seen your question. You're going to have to type it again. Rob IS, yeah. I've been working hard on getting the Man Crisis to people. The book has only been out since October, and the sales are a good about 120 or so, but I'm trying to get more and more people. Again, I've done Obsidian, I've done Judge Joe Brown. People are sharing the book, and the book is getting out there. It's just a matter of time. I want to get more people to talk about this man crisis, because it's something that the mainstream media will never talk about, because the mainstream media is all about pleasing the woman, and it's all about selling products to the woman, and it's all about getting her in debt so that they can profit at her expense and the expense of several men. Because this is something most people don't know, that your feminist won't tell them, is that your woman has 3 sources of income. She gets money from her job, she gets money from child support, she gets money from boyfriends. And this woman, this is why she is so poor, because in spite of having 3 sources of income, she doesn't understand how to be responsible with money, because people are constantly giving it to her. Whereas a man, you give him 1 source of income, and that's what we had for many years. One man would have a job, and everybody would live off that man's money. But the wealthy, they didn't want people living off the man's money, because if the man controlled the money, that meant that women could not go out here and buy all sorts of crazy stuff. They couldn't go out here and buy all sorts of expensive clothes, expensive shoes, and spend on foolish things. And that meant that they would never be able to go out here and make profit off those women. So that's why they wanted to get the female in charge of the home and the female in charge of the money. And that's why the wealthy allowed feminism to get promoted from the 50s to the 70s. Unfortunately, that economic model is starting to fall completely apart. What's up, Jabari? Glad to see you as part of the live stream. And that's what they want to do. And that's why the church is also falling apart, because the men have left the church, and the pastor, he is pandering to the women, and he is not teaching the word of God. Now, I've done several videos where I did sermons that the pastor will not preach, because the pastor, he has been compromised by your white supremacy, and your pastor has been compromised by your black woman, because he wants to get money out of the woman. So he creates a covert contract where he won't talk about certain issues, because those issues will hold the woman accountable. So he doesn't want to talk about those issues. So what he does is he'll talk about blessings and prosperity instead of talking about things as related to the woman being a helpmeet and support to a man, submitting to the man as God created in his order, and talk about how she needs to be in the order of God and follow the order of God. Luciano asks, as black men develop more successful platforms, yeah, that's happened right now. And it happened to me, though. YouTube would block certain videos. They would age restrict them. and they would false flag them, because if you start creating things that they don't want to hear, then what they do is they try to do things to push you off the platform or shadow ban you. That's happened to myself, Mr. Superboy, and many others. Whenever you start talking about things and you are successful, what they'll do is try to get you off, especially if you start talking against certain people like your Democrats, or you start talking about things like that. That's when they start having problems with you. And yeah, the preachers are attacking MGTOW because MGTOW is actually getting men back under God's natural order, because the preacher, he's outside of God's natural order. He's using religion, but your MGTOW is basically, it's a lot like what Jesus was talking about. Because if you look at what Jesus was talking about, he wanted people to follow him, and he wanted them to do what pleased him, because Jesus is God. And also, it was about people getting back under an order of God. And also, when it comes down to a lot of preachers, they don't really understand the word of God, because it's about entertaining and pacifying the woman. Because if you read your Corinthians, you have your Paul, who's talking about how a man should be, if he doesn't have a wife, should be out here looking to do the work that pleases God. And I talked about this in a video to the incels out there, because a lot of the incels, they have bought into this media, this gynocentric media, which tells them that in order for them to be a man, they have to have sex with a woman, and they have to get the approval of a woman. And when in the video, I went into the Corinthians and I showed what Paul talked about in order to get the incels to understand the role that God created for men, because that's the role they need to follow. Because Paul talked about, man, he said, if you don't have a wife, don't seek out one, and you should be seeking. Because the man who's single, he's focused on doing God's work and pleasing God, and not focused on going out here and trying to find a woman. But the media needs you to chase women in order to make money, because if the guy is chasing women and giving her his money, then they benefit, because they are getting money from them buying products, and they're making profits from those guys. Rabbi S, no, vol cells aren't the same as MGTOW. MGTOW is just a man going his own way, and he's chosen to go his own way. Whereas a voluntarily celibate man, he just chooses not to have sex. But a man who's going his own way, he's choosing to do things because he wants to go his own way. He wants to focus on self-actualization. And this is a key part of a man going his own way, is that he is just choosing to avoid women because he wants to self-actualize, and he wants to work towards achieving the personal goals he wants to accomplish in life. And that's what he wants to do overall. That's what I've been doing over the last 25 years. I've been focusing on the things I want to do. Things like I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to publish books. And when the mainstream publishers wouldn't want to publish the books I wanted to do, I went out and started my own thing. And when I wanted to go out here and do this comic book, that's why I started the Indiegogo, because ever since I was 9 years old, I wanted to do a comic book. And I figure if the companies which I've applied to, I applied to DC, I applied to Dynamite, and most of these companies, they don't want to talk to me, I'll try to go and do it myself to show that I can do this and it can be great. So that's why MGTOW men do have sex if they want, but the whole thing is that they're focused on self-actualization overall. That's what men who go their own way are. They just focused on themselves. They put themselves first. They put their goals first, and they're no longer seeking attention and approval of women. Rabbi S, do I see any foreseeable societal changes in the next 25 years with regards to betas becoming more common? Yeah, I do see a major generational change. I see it right now, because when it comes down to the beta male is not somebody who has a work ethic. And that's why you see so many of these guys out here, they're not working. And that's why I said in the man crisis in the later chapters, we're going to have an economic crisis in the future, because when it comes down to the beta male, He has no work ethic. He doesn't have any male life skills and does not know how to work. So we are going to see a complete societal change, because if these men aren't working, then you don't have a tax base. And if you don't have a tax base, then you're going to start having deficits, and that's going to have an impact on your economy. Because again, all these companies, they thought, oh, hiring these women, it was going to be a positive thing, but women don't build and women don't create, and women, they don't do anything long term. What they do is consume, but it's men who go out here and produce. And if your men aren't producing, what they're doing is just sitting there and they're dead weight. And with these beta males, omega males, and soy boys, these men, they're not going to be able to function, and that's going to have an overall impact on America long term. These guys, they don't know how to do for self, so that's why they're angry and frustrated. Then they're going to start talking about war, and then a lot of these guys, again, they're not going to be equipped for war, and they're just going to, because they can't even function in basic things. I remember watching a video of one of these soy boys in a store. One of these Trump supporters came in wanting some vaping liquid, and the guy had a complete meltdown because a Trump supporter came in. Now, as a businessman, if I see a guy coming in with a Trump hat, I'm just going to serve the man, get the money, and move on. But this man was so caught up in his feelings that he didn't think about the overall economic impact. He was so in his feelings. He was like, oh, you don't like Trump, but who cares if he doesn't like, if he's got a Trump hat on? You're in business to make money. Thank you, Governor of the Death Star, and God, thank you, Black Sand. I really appreciate the donations. Gonna use those again for book covers, and I'm gonna use them for promoting things like the Indiegogo. Or what I'm trying to do with Bill Walker right now is I'm trying to get a couple of pages together for the Indiegogo of the comic. I'm trying to get the first 4 or 5 pages designed. So that's what I'm working on right now. He's going to be doing that soon. So I'm going to use that money for that. Yeah, it's comical. Yeah, but that Trex, that's the thing with the simp, is he's just like a woman. So he will use shaming tactics like a woman because that's the behavior he saw modeled for him. And that's why you'll see him being jealous of another man, using shaming tactics. Well, one of the reasons, Rob, they don't take advice from an honest alpha male is because the beta male, he hates male authority. That's something he was taught early on by his mother. And your beta male, he doesn't like men. So he's been taught to hate men. So if a man tries to help him, he sees him as an enemy. And moreover, in a lot of cases, he sees him as competition. So he sees him as a threat. Now, a man who has a father in his life has been taught to value men, when he hears another man talking to him, he values that time that that man is giving him, and he appreciates the minute that that man takes to help him out. And that's the big problem with the beta male, is he doesn't understand that the man who is talking to him, in many cases, he's not an enemy. He's a man trying to help him. But he's learned that dysfunctional way of thinking, because the big problem with the beta male is his mother had a bad experience with men, and now she's teaching him that men are all bad and that he shouldn't listen to men. But in order to survive, he's going to need to get the advice of men, he's going to need the help of men, and he's going to need the guidance of men in order to go out here and live in the world. He's going to need those men to help him out. But he thinks, I don't need those men because Mom told me men are bad. But men are the only ones who are going to be able to teach him overall about how to survive in this world. Yeah, it is sad, but that's the way we have been conditioned to raised. And if God doesn't open your eyes to see the truth, what's going to happen is a lot of guys, they're out here still out here believing that this is the way a man is supposed to be. He's just supposed to be here to serve women. But in actuality, it's the other way around. God created the woman to be the helpmeet and support to the man. But thanks to feminism, we've had the roles completely reversed. And right now, yeah, Rob, that's why the divorce rate is high, because a lot of these women, they're looking for a man to serve them, and they're not thinking about what they're going to serve, how they're going to serve the man. And in the South Bronx, women don't even get married. All they have is single mothers. They just go out here and have babies so they can get money from the welfare state and child support. They're not thinking about building a family with that man or submitting to male authority overall. Luciano, that's good that you're learning how to respect male authority, because that's the only way you're going to survive out here. And adult authority, because I have family members in education. They have seen what happens when kids don't learn how to respect authority. They just destroy classrooms. I mean, I have a family member tell me that they had kids who were 6 years old tearing up the classrooms, breaking iPads, and wreaking havoc. And again, that's all because they're raised in a single mother household, and they're not taught how to respect authority at an early age. And again, that is something a child learns from the mother when there's a father in the home, because as the mother teaches the child how to respect the man, they then learn how to respect authority figures overall. Authority figures, they usually don't want to abuse power, but what they want to do is they're trying to protect people, and that's part of an authority figure's job, is to protect people. And that's what good authority figure wants to do, is they want to protect you, and that's why they impose authority. But in the case of gynocentric authority these days, a lot of the females don't want to be responsible, so they don't want to do what needs to be done. Get me some more. But soft parents, that's what they don't really understand the roles of that they need to use. They don't understand the authority they have to impose, and they don't understand the things that they have to do in order to have a strong, healthy household. Because beta males, the households they grow up in, they're a mess, and that's why a lot of these guys, they just can't function in the real world, because the mothers just give them so much of a pass. That's right, Trex. What women call they call it toxic masculinity, but it's actual masculinity that helps boys build discipline and character, and it's that actual masculinity that helps boys learn the things that they need to survive. Now, the actual toxic masculinity is the masculinity that feminists made, because feminists, they wanted to redefine masculinity, and without that core element of masculine energy from the father and the male life skills from the father, what they did was create a toxic male, and the toxic male is these soft beta males out here. And these soft beta males, by being submissive and weak, these are the toxic males, because they don't hold women accountable, they don't have standards for women, and they don't hold women to any sort of standard. And that's why these men are toxic. And then when these men can't get their way, because they're coming from a position of weakness, this is why they participate in that spectrum of violent behaviors. Yeah, Rabbi, yes, I would love to see the man crisis become a movement, because I believe that it would be the movement that would really change America, because men out here, they need to understand that they have been given a faulty set of skills. They have been following a poor definition of masculinity, and that this redefined definition of masculinity, this is destroying them. And this is why their lives just aren't working, because this is what they're doing. They're trying to redefine masculinity, but those soft males, they cannot survive on God's earth, because God did not make them to work like that. They just aren't designed to go like that, and they're trying to put a square peg in a round hole. And this is why these men's lives are falling apart, and because they can't make their lives work. Again, this is why they want to talk about war, but again, they're not equipped for war. That's why we need fathers and a dedication to, again, investing in men, building up fathers, valuing and valuing the role of fathers. And that's something we desperately need. Black Sand, I'm glad you're getting involved with your son, because that's something that's very important, because you have to get involved with your son. You have to have the father there, because the female teachers, they're going to try to put these gynocentric notions in your child's mind that oh, he needs to please women, he needs to appease women, and that this is success. And that's not success, because what do you do when you go out into the world where there is no female validation and you have to work on goals you want to accomplish? And that's something I've had to learn over the last 20 years, is that you have to learn to get out of that whole gynocentric education mindset where you're just trying to get these good grades to win the attention and approval of women, and start focusing on the goals you want to accomplish. And that's something that you need to be able to grow. And that's something a lot of guys, they're not learning how to go out here and achieve for themselves. They're not learning how to go out here and do for themselves. They're just learning how to make women happy. But I'm sorry, your job is not to make women happy. Your job is to find your purpose on God's earth and make him happy. And that's something guys aren't getting, because everything is about making the woman the center of their world. And that's not what it is. It's about making God the center of your world. And you're supposed to be doing his work on earth, not putting women up as gods. And that's what feminists want you to do, is make this woman into a god. And again, that's a violation of God's first commandment, where he said, thou shalt have no other gods before me. And that's what feminists want you to do with their notion, with their narrative, but that's not what God wants you to do. Jeffrey A. No, a man who holds the door open for a woman is not a simp. A man who opens the door and there's no ulterior motive for it, he's just being respectful, and there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, that's right, Ron. Feminists don't have very little power without the media. If it wasn't for them controlling the media and controlling the culture, they would fall completely apart, because all men have to do is just stop spending money, which is what a lot of men are doing right now. And we're seeing that feminist power is starting to fall apart, because in order for the media to push these ideas, you have to have economics behind it. But what's happening is the men are walking away. And we're seeing that with David's Bridal's bankruptcy and many of these other stores closing and malls closing. Men are not spending money on women. And the Me Too movement pushed the economy in a completely different direction. This is why bars are closing. This is why clubs are closing. This is why restaurants are closing. And again, men were spending money there to take women out. But because of the Me Too movement, a lot of those men are forced to keep their money in their pocket, because a lot of men today are saying that, look, there are intangibles that are more important than the attention and approval of a woman, like their health, like their safety, and their freedom. And they don't want to wind up getting arrested all because some female they go out with makes an allegation of rape or sexual assault, and they don't want that to happen. So that's why they are just avoiding women overall. Tricks manifest. What we're seeing with black women is black men are told to lower their standards and go along. And again, that's what feminists want men to do. They want them to be these soft, submissive men, but that goes against the natural order of God, because no woman wants to be involved with a soft, submissive man who is just compliant, because she knows that that man will not be able to protect for her or provide for her. And if this man is this weak, then this man can do nothing for her overall. Black women, they're told they want to push this standard, but then the whole thing is that their nature runs completely against it. What's up, E-Deck? Glad to see you as part of the stream. Gonna stay off maybe about 30 more minutes. Jabari, I learned how to cook when I was young. Meal prep is something that every man needs to learn how to do, because when you know how to cook, you don't need to go out and get fast food. And this is a life skill every man needs to have. Some guys will sit there and say, oh, it's a feminine skill, but it's something I learned as young as about 7, 8 years old, is learning how to cook. And it's something that every man needs to know how to do, because you can save a lot of money if you learn how to make your own meals and you learn how to cook. That's a major life skill a man can have. That way he can save a lot of money, and he can start using that for other things like starting businesses. So if you learn how to cook, that's a major asset. I know how to make all sorts of stuff, and I'm always learning. And again, so you can save a ton of money on that. And That I don't know, Luciano, if it's a byproduct of gynocentric societies, but it could possibly be one, the brainwashing or relying on others. But no, but with God's order, He wants everyone to work together interdependently. The big problem with your feminism is they want a codependent relationship where they extrapolate resources by playing the victim. And when you play the victim, nobody moves forward. And that's what feminism has done is it's stagnated everybody and it's prevented everybody from growing because the men are in a submissive position and the women are just running a fiefdom where nothing grows and changes because they don't want to take any risks and they just want to be comfortable. Glad to see you, Q Savage. Yeah, eat that fast food is a waste of money. I only eat it when I have to, but if I can, I like to make my own, or I like to go buy groceries and cook stuff because you can say again, it's just a waste of money. Plus, the food tastes better. When you go to McDonald's, the burgers are bland, but when you make your own burgers, they're filled with flavor. When you take your ground beef and your onions and your peppers and your pepper and seasoned salt, you make a great burger and it has good flavor. And I like cooking like that because it's much better. The flavor is better, the taste is better, and it's an overall better experience. So if you can cook, you can really make some stuff that it tastes 10 times better than a fast food restaurant. Yeah, they want men to be slaves and to women in the state, but the whole thing is that if the men are slaves, then the whole thing is that it doesn't make them actualize their potential and it stagnates the economy overall. So the men at the bottom don't really do anything and it just takes us to nowhere. Yeah, that's a good point, Patrick. Yeah, feminists and LGBT want man validation because God will not validate because that's not part of God's order. In God's order, He does not elevate the woman above God, and He does not push LGBT because that's outside the order of God, because He spoke against those things because those are considered deviant. And I didn't know that, Q Savage. Yeah, but you don't only need a couple of ingredients and you can make anything. Yeah, feminists want women in power because they want to control the political power, and that's what they want to do. And yeah, Trex, the black church has become gynocentric, and it's outside of God's order because God did not make the woman to be the leader of the church. He made the men to be the leader of the church, but the men have been pushed out because you have the state that goes out here and continues to support the woman. So the men have no authority in any place. So that's why the church has become so gynocentric over the last couple of decades. It's also why the church has become so corrupt over the last couple of decades. Okay, but the church has become a corrupt institution. I mean, they're no longer even teaching the word of God over there because, again, I look at the core foundations of it, and yeah, you make a good point, Trex. Yeah, women aren't really the real problem because what created the man crisis was these men at the top. These simps. They were the ones who gave these women power. They were the ones who gave women jobs, and they were the ones who did this. And again, the wealthy created the feminist platform because they wanted to get more money. Because you had your Rockefeller who wanted to get two taxes. He wanted to be able to get taxes from the man, get taxes from the woman, and he wanted to be able to control the children. Unfortunately, over the last 50 years, yes, you've gotten two income tax forms and you've gotten control over the children. Unfortunately, the grandson and the granddaughter are not able to be productive because you have the granddaughter who's a third-wave feminist who hates men, and then you have this soy boy beta male who has absolutely no masculine energy and absolutely no passion to do anything. So you're not going to get any taxes out of that beta male soy boy who's sitting on the sofa of his mother or his grandmother playing video games. And you're not going to get any money out of that feminist who is just sitting there, just getting jobs and quitting them. So Rockefeller's whole plan has fallen completely apart. And that's why we have this man crisis going on, because when you have men working, they are paying taxes. But when you have men on a sofa, they aren't paying any taxes. And when you have women working, they are just consuming and running themselves into debt. So the whole plan that they had for bringing feminism in has fallen completely apart. And that's why we have this looming economic crisis, and then all these guys talking about civil war, because these guys, again, they just are outside of God's order. The family has fallen completely apart, and they have no model for their survival, and they have no way of understanding how to survive. So the whole thing that Rockefeller created is falling completely apart, and nobody knows how to get it back on track as related to an economic platform. And again, that's why these guys are talking about war, because they don't understand how to create new markets and new businesses, and they don't know how to do anything, and that's why they're all messed up. And Luciano makes a good point. The boys are out here, they're buying video games, junk food, and gadgets, and they're not thinking about things like building or investing, things that a boy with a father in his life would learn how to do at an early age, because the father understands that the only person who's going to take care of that boy is himself. So he's going to prepare that boy to be able to go out into the world and be able to do that. But because we have demonized fathers, minimized fathers, and devalued fathers, what we have done is we have taken the one person who God created to help the young boy out of his life, and that's why the boy today grows up to become a male who does not know how to function as a man or how to navigate as a man. Edith makes a good point. Yeah, some men are so quick to kill another man on the word of a woman. And yeah, that happens. I talked about that in Misadventures of Captain Savaho, how these guys, they get used because they are so in their emotions over a woman that women use them as tools and weapons to go out here and kill others. And they don't really think critically, because they don't understand that, if a woman, they don't understand that you don't have to do things like that to get a woman. And if you let women use you as a tool, they're going to make a complete fool out of you. And this is something a man would learn if he had fathers and other men around him to teach him. Look, if a woman is telling you to go out here and commit a crime, that woman doesn't care about you. That woman just has you out here. She is looking to use you as a tool. And what's going to happen is one man is going to wind up dead. You're going to wind up in jail, and she's going to be out here with two other guys. And this is something guys don't understand because they don't have any critical thinking. It was something I learned when I was 16 years old. I was sitting there reading the newspaper one day, and it was talking about how two of these guys had one guy had murdered another guy over a girl. And I sat down there and I thought about it. I said, one guy is dead, the other one is in jail, and she's still out here with two other dudes. And the cycle is continuing because these guys don't critically think, and like I did back then, and say, look, if she really wanted to be with one of you, she would be with one of you. And the only reason why she has the two of you fighting over her is because she wants to get attention for herself, and she's getting off on the attention that she's getting. So why should you go out here and fight over her when, again, you are the prize, because you are God's steward, and it's for her to show you how she is going to be a helpmeet to you, not how you are going to impress her. And again, that goes back to that whole feminist notion a lot of guys have learned. Is they've learned this whole feminist thing where they're sitting there, oh, I need to please the woman, when no, you need to go out here and please God. And she needs to show you how she's going to help you do God's work out here in the world. Yeah, it's just like those guys, Spirit of Justice. They killed the guy, Junior Guzman Feliz in the bodega. They killed the boy over what this girl had said, and they put all of their lives in jeopardy, all because this female said that she had been attacked by this guy. And again, any rational thinking man who hears about something happening to a woman, they're not going to go out in the street and go looking for the guy. They're going to let the police handle it, and they're going to let the police deal with it, because when it comes down to these situations, you have to think before you go out here. Yeah, Black Sand. The guy shot the mob boss, and I talked about that in a video this week about how that beta male decided he was going to kill this mob boss, all because the mob boss told him to leave his niece alone. And that was a textbook case of what happens when you have a beta male who doesn't understand the concept of male authority. Now, a man who understands male authority understands that when a man comes to you face to face, that is the ultimate form of respect. And if a man comes to you face to face and tells you to leave his niece alone or his daughter alone, what you will do is walk away from that man. But because this beta male grew up not understanding male authority, what he did was he decided he was going to go out here and stage an accident, then use the accident to murder this mob boss. And he destroyed not only the life of the mob boss, but he also destroyed his own life, because if he doesn't do life in prison, what he's going to do is he's going to wind up 6 feet under, because when it comes down to your beta male, he's thinking short term and not long term. And this guy, all he thought about was this man was somebody telling him he could do something. So he was going to kill that man, because another thing that's related to beta males is they don't see male authority figures as people they need to respect, because the women have taught them that a man is someone whose authority they don't need to regard. And if a man tells you something, you don't have to follow whatever he tells you. So that's why this beta male challenged this mob boss and decided to kill him. And again, it just shows you how dangerous these beta males are. They'll sit there and they'll kill a mob boss because, again, they don't respect male authority and male authority figures. And this also ties into why a civil war with these beta males would be a complete disaster, because in order to wage a war, you need to have male authority, because in order for the soldiers to follow orders, they have to respect the authority of a male authority figure. And your beta male, he can't go to war because, one, he's been taught not to respect male figures, and two, he's been taught not to respect male authority. So when I listen to these guys talking about how they're going to wage this civil war, how can you wage a war if you don't want to follow the leadership of another man? And if another man tells you something, the first thing you want to do is attack that man. So all those guys who are in the militias and talking about civil war, they would spend more time killing each other than killing the so-called enemy, because these guys don't want to follow the leadership of another man. And that's something that is key to winning a war, is when you have males, they have to follow male authority. And that's how you take territory, and that's also how you take resources. And this is something your beta male wouldn't understand as related to war. Again, your beta male, he'll sit there, he'll talk about war, but he doesn't understand the whole concept of war. Yeah, Rapper 10,000. The military has rules against that, but the beta male, he doesn't follow rules. So the beta male doesn't follow rules, and that's the big problem, because he doesn't understand social rules and he doesn't understand social order. And this is the big problem with your beta male. He'll sit there and he, like in the case of this mob boss, he won't understand why he needs to respect that man's position and respect that man's position in the community. And he won't understand the basic rule for men, that if a man comes to you face to face directly and tells you to leave a member of his family alone, you need to respect that man, and you need to respect that man's wishes, because that man is trying to show you respect. And when you have a situation like that, you need to say, okay, this man is coming to me face to face. He's letting me know to leave him alone. I need to leave her alone. And any man who has a father in his life, he will respect that man's wishes. But your beta male, because he's all in his feelings, oh, I love her, I have to have. It's like, no, there's all these women out here, and as one of my viewers said on Facebook or in the comments section of that video, there are all these women on Tinder, there are all these women on all these dating apps, and if this man had any sort of understanding that there are four women for every one man, like I talk about in my book Stop Simping, he could have saved his life, and he could have gone on to have a great relationship with somebody else. So he could have gone out here and he could have found another woman to deal with, because there are four women for every one man out there, but you just have to have the confidence to go out here and pursue it. And this is something, again, your beta male, he doesn't know how to do, because your beta male, primarily, he's been raised by females. And when he gets the attention of one female, he thinks he has to keep staying with that female. And then what he has to do is he has to keep trying to save this relationship instead of letting that relationship go. And what I learned from Dr. Robert Glover in his No More Mr. Nice Guy book is that some of the best things you could do is let a woman go, because sometimes there's a better opportunity at another relationship out there for you. But your beta male, he wants to hold on to something that could could wind up destroying him, instead of just letting things go. Now, in the case of that mobster, I saw where this guy, he just was, if the guy tells you to leave her alone, okay, leave her alone. And maybe there's another female out there who actually wants to spend time with you. So go spend time looking for her. But the beta male doesn't want to do that, again, because he's lazy. So that's a big problem with the beta male. He doesn't understand that there's a whole world out there, a whole world of opportunity, and he doesn't have the courage to go out here and take the risk. Luciano, I learned not to be over reliant on technology, because you have to. It's a great tool, but the whole thing is you have to learn how to use that tool in discipline. Thank you for Computer Geek for coming to the chat. Really appreciate it. Hope you come back for next week's live streams on Wednesday and Friday. I might do another golf live stream, so that might be the one I do on next Friday. But that may be the one I do, is the introversion one. That's the one I really am passionate about doing. People overuse technology and gadgets because they are lazy. They become dependent on them, but you have to learn how to not become dependent on them. Sometimes you just have to take a time and unplug, and that's something you have to do, but it's just something you just have to do. So there's something people were raised to do, but it's something you have to break out of. Myham makes a good point. Yeah, there's a man crisis in Hollywood, because Hollywood is run by females and betas. And yeah, they want to replace Blade with a female, but the whole thing is that I don't think that's going to work, because what made Blade a great character was the fact that Wesley Snipes made him so masculine and strong. I would love to do a goth music one, but there are a whole bunch of other people working on the music. And what I want to do is focus Black Sand on more substantive subjects, because I look at the thing, and yeah, there are other people talking about music. I might talk about it in depth, but what I want to do is talk about things as related to the scene from a social perspective. Like last week, I talked about the generation gap, and the next one I want to do is talking about introversion, because a lot of goths, they are introverts, and a lot of people misinterpret things as related to body language and communication. And then there's issues as related to anxiety. So I really want to talk about that, so that people can continue building a bridge, and they can learn about different things about being shy. That's something that they have to learn how to work through, because a lot of kids, they like the scene, but they are afraid to go out to clubs. And I want to help them, encourage them, be able to go and socialize with other goths out there. Alpha makes a good point. Well, the white beta male, he sees America as a lost cause because he can't make things work in America. And the thing that's keeping him from learning how to work in America is the fact that he has been taught not to value being a man. The whole thing is he learned everything about masculinity from women, and he's trying to be a man like a woman. And that's why he can't get any power, because he does not know how to do things for himself. And that's why he's so angry and wants to create a civil war, because that's something that he doesn't know how to do anything, and he doesn't know how to adapt. And that's the other big problem with the beta male, is that he does not know how to adapt in America and create markets for himself and create businesses for himself. Thank you, Maham, about the Danny Phantom video. I had to do the Danny Phantom video because after I watched the first couple of episodes of Danny Phantom, I saw how great this cartoon was, and I saw that too many people are stuck making these 80s cartoons or 80 movies on 80s properties. And a lot of the kids who grew up in the 90s, the kids who grew up in the millennium, the kids who grew up in the 2010s, their characters are just being ignored and they're being minimized while everybody focuses on things like the MCU or a lot of these old 80s concepts like Ghostbusters and Terminator. And yeah, I grew up enjoying those concepts, but I understand that kids need to have their stuff seen too. And Danny Phantom was a boatload of fun to watch. I mean, it reminded me a lot of Ghostbusters, but it just was so much fun. And I saw all those kids. I did an Instagram where I posted the Danny Phantom DVD case, and I got so many likes on it that it showed me that, yeah, we need to start talking about this character and not the Ghostbusters, because Bruce Hartman made a great character. He was just starting to become more popular, and they didn't want to do a fourth season, but they want to do another Ghostbusters movie. And I said, why do you want to do another Ghostbusters movie when there's a huge audience that's into your Danny Phantom, and you don't want to capitalize on that, but you'd rather capitalize on a property that's over 30 years old. Most of the people are sitting there. They're my age. I'm 45, and I have no interest in seeing another Ghostbusters movie. And Josh is saying about the Bill and Ted movie. I don't want to see that. I saw that in high school. I'm too old for that stuff. And the kids of today, they don't relate to that. They look at that as grandpa's TV show, a movie. And the kids are looking at that going, why would I want to watch some old man? It just doesn't make any sense. When you have this Danny Phantom, I think it was ended in 2007. So it's about 10 years old. And it's a property that's waiting to be made into a film, and it's waiting to be made in either an animated movie or you can make a live action one. This is the exact same premise, but it's something that kids, they grew up with, and they want to see their stuff. They want to see their stories. And Gen Xers, we have to get out of this whole, we have to keep making the same stuff from the 80s and pass the baton to the next generation. And that's something, that's why that's why I talked about in that video as the Danny Phantom, because I looked at the fan base. I said, why are you still making this old stuff when there's all of this great brand new stuff? And yeah, EDEC, why are they avoiding 2019 youth culture? Because they're too scared to take a risk. And that also ties into the man crisis, because most of these beta males, they're so afraid of failing. That's why we keep seeing the same movies over and over again. They want to make another Rush Hour. They want to make another Terminator. They want to make another Alien. They want to make another Predator, not knowing that these properties are starting to get really old, and they are sitting there making the same characters over and over again. And it gets boring to watch over time. It gets really boring when you're watching the same movie over and over. That's one of the issues I had with the MCU, is that the movies are really starting to repeat themselves. And it just becomes a chore going to these movies, because you keep remaking them instead of trying to take a risk on stuff from another era. And again, that goes back to the man crisis, because many of your Hollywood executives are females or beta males, and they want to play it safe instead of going out here and taking a major risk, because that's another part of the nice guy paradigm, is they want to keep making the same thing because um, they want to continue making money. And another thing with the beta male is that he wants to play it so safe because he wants a guaranteed result, but you don't get success unless you go out here and take a major risk. I mean, guys like Vince McMahon did not become billionaires by playing it safe. They became billionaires when they started taking risks. The first risk Vince McMahon took was giving Hulk Hogan the belt, but he started to lose money because he kept Hulk Hogan with the belt too long and he didn't develop new stars. And then things didn't come back for him until the Attitude Era when he started taking more risks. And this was some of the things that were a big problem. I've never seen Johnny Test D. Woodward, but I look at a lot of these 2000s cartoons, and they were very promising. And good point, Black Sand. I can't stand gender swapping myself. I mean, just create a new character as I see it. Instead of gender swapping a character, why don't you create a new character like I did with Isis and E-Steam and characters like Matilda Crowley? I mean, if I can create a brand new heroine, now why can't the Hollywood movie studios? But again, that goes back to the beta male. They just keep doing things over and over again because they would rather go out here and keep rebooting movies instead of taking a risk on a brand new property. And the other thing that they want to do is, like the Terminator franchise, they just keep retconning movies. Oh, I made a mistake with Terminator 3. I made a mistake with Terminator Salvation. I made a mistake with Terminator Genesis. And now they want to make another Terminator movie to fix the mistakes they made in a previous movie. And again, that definition of insanity is doing the exact same thing and expecting a different result. And your beta male with this Terminator franchise seems to keep making the same movie over and over instead of saying, okay, this franchise has run its course. We need to put a period at the end of it and move on. And we need to take a look at some of this other properties out there and try some of this new stuff. So I look at the Terminator franchise, and again, I see beta males in action there. We just want to keep making the same movie over and over again. And that's not something people want to see. People want to see. Edeg, I don't think Hollywood is purposely trying to do it. The problem is that when you have beta males in charge, they are just afraid of risk. They're afraid of failure. And what they do is make the same movies over and over again. I don't know about seeing Us, Governor of the Death Star. I'm so busy. I don't even have time to do much stuff because I'm so busy. But I'm trying to get my schedule on track. So I've been busy working on this new ISIS story, and I'm getting ready to launch E-Steam, Goddess of, this April. And I'm also working on All That Glitters. All That Glitters, this is going to be coming out on March 25th on Kindle. It's available on paperback right now. So I'm getting ready to do the promotion for All That Glitters. And I'm starting to do the pre-promotion for E-Steam, Goddess Up. So these are the two books that are a part of the SJS Direct 2019 catalog. And I'm hoping that you guys will pick these two up. This is the book that E-Steam, Goddess Up takes place after E-Steam Ascension. And Isis, All That Glitters is the story that is what the comic from the Indiegogo is going to be based on. So those are the two books that are a part of the 2019 catalog. I'm hoping to get the John Haynes book out soon. Mike Williams, I've talked to him about doing the cover. So as soon as I get the cover, the next John Haynes Doc Succubus will be coming out next. And those are the three books of the catalog that are for this year's catalog. Good point on him. I would like to see some of the newer Transformers, but Hollywood just keeps focusing on the same old ones from my era instead of giving you guys their own characters. That was one of the things that was great about Beast Wars was we got to see brand new characters. Um, oh, I did see that Brother Cap with the Kotal Khan. I saw that on YouTube. I saw the new MK11 characters. I don't know about Avatar. I haven't seen it, so I can't really say anything about it. Eva, what made me choose Egyptian names and backgrounds in my comics was the fact that I had a dream about Isis, and I decided to go with that because I wanted to show Isis in the stories because she was considered the mother goddess, and she was a leader who looked out for the kingdom, and that was something that really resonated with me. And I wanted to create a strong, positive heroine out there. So that's why I chose Egyptian names and backgrounds for the Isis series, and that's why I focused on those characters because I wanted to give girls a strong heroine from a positive background, and I wanted to show that we came from great people like the Egyptians and the Nubians, and I wanted to show how great those civilizations were and how those people were heroes. So that was one of the reasons why I chose them, because when it came down to the Egyptian gods, a lot of people they would go out here and whiten them up, and then they would not talk about how they were how they were black because the Nubians were black, Egyptians were black, and I wanted to show in the Isis series how they were black and then how these gods came to help black people overall. I'm going to get ready to wrap up the stream in about 4 or 5 minutes because I have to get up early tomorrow morning, and I have a lot of work to do. So I have to get ready for to do something tomorrow morning. I have some stuff to do, so I hope to see Battle Angel. I might have to go see that on pay-per-view. Yeah, Luciano, technology can create and promote skills. I learned how to publish books from technology. Digital publishing is how I learned how to publish books because without digital publishing, I wouldn't have been able to publish any of these books at all. Without print-on-demand technology, I wouldn't be able to publish Isis and Eastine books, and I wouldn't be able to create a book like The Man Crisis because trade publishing is controlled primarily by women, and they don't want to show you, black people out here. They don't want to put certain books out there. They don't want to put positive stories about black people out there, and they don't want to talk about men's issues. So I wouldn't have had a platform without technology, and that's something that I wanted. That's one of the things we need to appreciate about the technology out here. And I've heard about that Udemy program. I'm thinking about getting that one for myself. But I'm getting ready to wrap this stream up in about about 2 minutes or so. Queen, you don't need to find a publisher. All you need to do is go to kdpamazon.com, and there you can publish your own paperbacks, or you can head to Smashwords to publish your own ebooks. Dr. C, JJ Victor, you can buy my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com. I'm going to try to leave a link to it when the stream ends, and you can buy my books. All of my books are on Amazon.com right now, and you can get every book from The Man Crisis, which was out in October of 2018, to the two new 2019 SJS Direct Catalog books, Isis All That Glitters and Eastine Goddess Of. You can get these both in paperback on Amazon.com right now, and they're coming to Kindle. Isis All That Glitters is coming March 25th, and Eastine Goddess Of is coming to Kindle on March 22nd. And you can pre-order both of these books on Amazon.com right now. And I thank you all for coming to the stream. I hope you'll be there for next Wednesday's stream. I'm going to do another writing topic, and Friday I want to do another goth topic. I might do one about introversion in the goth subculture, and I'm hoping you guys go pick up a copy of The Man Crisis, and I'm hoping you guys pick up the two 2019 books that are part of the Isis Isis, all that glitters, and East Team Goddess of. Um, Thank you all for coming to the stream, and I hope you all have a good night.